Well, to talk more about this four-day summit, I'm joined by Brenden THOMPSON. He's coordinator of Catholic Voices UK. Mr. THOMPSON, thanks very much for speaking to France 24. First of all, your reaction to this four-day summit. Is this the way forward in tackling this deep-rooted problem within the Church?
So I think, like many ordinary Catholics, I feel like heartbroken when I think about victims. You hear anybody's testimony and you feel sickened and embarrassed and frankly ashamed sometimes to be a Catholic. But I do feel hopeful that they're taking this problem seriously. That part of the purpose of the summit is to recognise that this is a global problem. A lot's been done in Europe, but not everywhere in the world. It's not been done the same. And to have a sense that it's not hollow or empty words, that there are consequences if bishops or church leaders are found to be covering this up.
I mean, that's cover-ups is one of the issues because, of course, we heard in that report that, victims are incredibly sceptical because there have been times when they flagged up this kind of sexual abuse and nothing's been done about it. What can be done to ensure that once these things are flagged up, it's taken further, it's taken forward?
Yeah, so the first step, I guess, is we're not trying to defend the indefensible. It's kind of recognition of the failures that the Church has made. But then also, how do we move forward so that in many parts of the world where there have been independent investigations, where policies of safeguarding have been put in place, there has been a drastic reduction in the number of cases. So how do we share the insights from various places in the world, recognizing in some places in the world they don't recognize that abuse is a problem there. They say, like, this is a European problem. So we need to get out of that mentality. We also need to get out the mentality that, we need to protect the Church's image somehow, or this is an issue of the Church's credibility. It's not. We need to be victim-centered mindset. So I think Pope Francis sees this starkly in terms of it's a crisis of leadership rather than more norms, because unless integrity precedes policy, policy is not going to have any effect.
I mean, can the Church, as you spoke about image there, you spoke about credibility. I mean, whether we like it or not, the Church's credibility does take a hit when it comes to issues like sexual abuse.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a shame because the Church, in theory, could be a really strong leader because its global connections. The Church is a leader when it comes to fighting sex trafficking across the world because it can connect civil authorities in countries where people are being trafficked from and where they're being trafficked to. The Church has not been a leader when it comes to fighting sex abuse, but I think part of this conference is, I think we can have some hope that if we can put policies and procedures in place, really strict policies, and make sure that there are audits and task force holding them to account and making sure that policy is being implemented but followed, but also so that there's a heart that the bishops feel personally responsible through having heard the testimony of victims to actually follow through. So I think that the Church can become a leader in this space.
I mean, just a final question for you, Mr. THOMPSON. We've heard in the past Pope Francis evoking this idea of married clergy. Do you think in our lifetime, at least, we might see an end to celibacy of Catholic priests?
Well, whether priests should be celibate or not, it's a question that could be open for discussion. It's a norm, not a discipline. But I think that when it comes to this, celibacy is not shown as a risk factor when it comes to paedophilia. So let's not use it as an excuse to kind of get away from the fact that let's deal with what we've got in front of us, which is how do we put norms, policies and procedures in place that protect victims.
OK, Brenden THOMPSON, you're coordinator of Catholic Voices in the UK. Thanks for your time today.